300,000 years ago, Earth was in a prolonged state of geological and climatic instability, the Pleistocene epoch. Thick glaciers stretched from northern to central Europe. Cold winds swept unceasingly across the continents. To the south, the dense forests of Africa formed an unbroken belt so thick that no light penetrated its leafy canopy. In the east, Asia trembled from tectonic shifts and relentless volcanic eruptions, creating a harsh and ever-changing living environment. This was a planet governed entirely by biology and geography. There were no power centers, no species was favored, only natural selection ruled. Among the animal kingdom, top predators shared one trait: superior physical strength. Saber-toothed cats could tear through necks in a single bite. Mastodons stood 4 meters tall and weighed tons, dominating the Eurasian steppe. Cave bears, massive omnivores, reigned over the icy caverns. All had evolved over millions of years into survival machines. In the midst of this world, a different creature emerged: Homo sapiens. They lacked physical superiority. No exceptional speed, no built-in natural weapons, yet these seeming disadvantages came with a revolutionary twist: a brain more complexly organized than any species before. Fossils found in East Africa, from the Omo Valley to Jebel Irhoud, show Homo sapiens began to form around 300,000 years ago. They were not the only humans alive at the time, but they brought with them a never-before-seen behavioral package: memory, thought, and most crucially, mobility. Their movement was initially unintentional. Small groups followed migrating herds, escaped floods, and searched for water, slowly drifting away from their points of origin. But over millennia, this constant movement triggered a rare biological phenomenon: a species able to adapt to every environment it entered. From the East African grasslands, Homo sapiens moved northward through the Levant corridor, spreading across the Middle East, Anatolia, and continental Asia. In each new place, they had to relearn survival, identifying poisonous plants, tracking local prey, understanding soil, water, and climate. Their spread was not fast, but wherever they survived, they left traces, from tools made of stone, bone, and wood, to fire pits, shelters, and later, primitive symbols on rocks. They turned unfamiliar terrain into viable habitats, not through advanced technology, but through learning, memory, and the ability to pass knowledge on. The Homo sapiens brain changed the game. Collective memory enabled accumulation of hunting experience, navigation, and weather forecasting. Early language, hand signals, and vocalizations allowed small groups to share information efficiently. Most importantly, cooperation, not just driven by instinct, but by roles and shared goals. These traits didn't just help them survive, they helped them outperform all other human species. No one gave Homo sapiens dominion over Earth, but through tens of thousands of years of migration, they claimed that position, step by step. When they crossed deserts, survived high mountains, forded rivers, and traversed forests, they weren't just expanding territory, they were expanding the scope of cultural evolution. And that, more than any tool or city, laid the foundation for the Anthropocene. The turning point didn't begin with metal tools, writing, or cities. It began with a hungry group following antelope, carrying memory and curiosity, and never stopping. Art 2: Wanderers in the Dark. When Homo sapiens first left East Africa, they had no idea they were about to reshape planetary history. Their only motivation was survival. Water was scarce, the climate unstable, predators more frequent near human settlements. Antelope, zebras, and elephants migrated seasonally, and to survive, humans had to follow. Each group consisted of just a few dozen individuals. They moved without fixed routes, tracking animal footprints, changing paths when rivers dried or forests burned. Their journey had no final destination, but every day they went farther than the generation before. They carried no heavy loads, just essentials: stone tools, fire-making kits, terrain memory, and observational experience passed through countless generations. During this process, a natural navigation system began to form. Homo sapiens didn't just memorize paths. They began constructing internal mental maps, vivid spatial awareness without language. They remembered the smell of soil, the direction of the wind, the taste of different springs. They recognized when berries ripened, when predators were near, signaled by alarm birds. Every sound, every shift in the environment became legible. These signs weren't written in books. They were stored in collective memory, passed down through words, hand gestures, and specific calls across generations. Archaeological studies in Israel, Jordan, and the Sinai Peninsula show ancient rest stops along the crossroads between Africa and West Asia. These were not fixed locations, but their repeated use suggests early seasonal travel routes, a precursor to organized nomadism. Memory was their primary navigation tool, and memory takes time to build. Unlike animals that relied on instinct, Homo sapiens developed learning and recall. Someone who had once passed through a narrow gorge where a tiger ambushed could warn the group. A worn rock might signal a water source during drought. From such small details, humans began crafting behavioral maps. Intuitive navigation resulted from generations of constant exposure to the natural world. No compass or paper maps. They felt the sun's path, sensed moisture in the wind, read star positions. It began as biology, but Homo sapiens turned it into a flexible logic system usable anywhere. From grasslands to jungles, from steppes to mountain foothills, humans transformed space into living memory. The more alien the landscape, the sharper their orientation. The groups that survived were not those with the most tools, but those who remembered and shared information best. Along this ongoing exploration, Homo sapiens developed a deep relationship with the environment. They didn't just pass through. They observed, interacted, and left marks. They sensed where to pitch tents, where hot winds came, where predators gathered at dusk. Through this process, the world ceased being an anonymous forest or foreign mountain range. It became a signal system, one that humans could decode. And once a species learns to decode the world, it inevitably tries to control it. Expansion was more than physical movement. It was mental expansion. From finding paths in darkness, humans learned to reconstruct spatial memory, plan seasonal survival, allocate groups by terrain, and decide where to stop or go. They didn't set out to dominate, but their intelligent mobility made them the first species to manage a habitat beyond their line of sight. Part 3. The greatest weapon: cooperation. Homo sapiens was not the only species that used tools, nor were they the first to live in groups, but they were the first to build a flexible system of cooperation, and that changed the course of evolution. In a world where predators possessed fangs, claws, and overwhelming strength, a lone human was prey. But a group of 10 humans could become a coordinated unit if they divided tasks and maintained communication. Group hunting behavior appeared early among Homo sapiens. Evidence from ancient trap pits, synchronized cut marks on large animal bones, and tool clusters suggests they coordinated well in large-scale hunting operations. Hunting a mastodon or mature antelope couldn't be done alone. It required scouts to go ahead, trackers to follow at a distance, signalers, and attackers. Once the prey was trapped or isolated, the whole group would act. The meat would then be processed and distributed, not by instinct, but by emerging social rules. A complete language wasn't necessary. Homo sapiens used eye contact, hand gestures, and shared sounds within the group. The ability to read intentions from behavior was critical. This was the basis of theory of mind, the understanding that others have thoughts and goals, essential for long-term coordination. Neuroscience studies show Homo sapiens had a highly developed prefrontal cortex, responsible for managing social behavior, planning, impulse control, and predicting outcomes. In other words, modern humans didn't just react to the world, they predicted and shaped it. Group organization was adaptable. In dense forests, hunting parties stayed small and quiet. In open grasslands, they could coordinate wide-scale ambushes. Each individual could shift roles depending on the situation, something unheard of in most predators. But the greatest distinction came after the hunt. The group didn't disperse. They shared meals, retold events, analyzed mistakes, and memorized effective strategies. This is how culture was created and passed down. Cooperation wasn't limited to hunting. It extended to childcare, elder protection, and food sharing. Individuals who didn't hunt still contributed by guarding the camp, passing on knowledge, or helping raise offspring. This created a robust social network that went beyond simple herd behavior. Here, value wasn't measured in brute strength, but in long-term contribution to the group. Over time, cooperation became the key to territorial expansion. Groups could travel farther, survive harsher conditions, because they could rely on each other. When one was injured, others helped. When food ran low, it was redistributed. Trust within the group wasn't built solely on kinship, but on a shared history of danger, sacrifice, and survival. This formed the psychological basis for complex societies, eventually leading to tribes, rituals, laws, and culture. If hunting was the need, then cooperation was the optimal solution. No need for superior strength or speed. With effective organization, Homo sapiens could dominate entire ecosystems, where solitary individuals wouldn't last days. That's why cooperation wasn't just a survival skill. It was a global strategy, not by force, but by connection. Part 4: Destined Encounters. As Homo sapiens left Africa and entered Eurasia, they were not alone. In nearly every region they reached, other human species already lived. Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans on the Tibetan Plateau and Siberia. Other archaic humans possibly existed in unrecorded archaeological gaps. The human evolutionary tree at that time wasn't a single branch, but a complex web of lineages, split from a common ancestor 500,000 to 700,000 years earlier. When Homo sapiens entered these new territories, they met humans with distinct anatomy, behavior, and adaptations. In some cases, these meetings led to conflict. Injuries on human remains and combat tools in the same strata suggest violent encounters, especially around vital areas like rivers, large caves, or hunting grounds. However, in many other cases, result was not exclusion, but mixing. Modern genetics confirms that all non-African modern humans carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. Populations in Papua New Guinea, Australia, and parts of Southeast Asia carry an additional 4 to 6% Denisovan genes. These genetic traces could only exist through interbreeding between species, and this interbreeding wasn't rare. It happened repeatedly, across regions and generations. That shows reproductive compatibility between archaic human species. Homo sapiens were not as biologically separate as once thought. The genetic effects were clear. Some Neanderthal genes enhanced immunity, especially against viruses. Denisovan genes helped regulate hemoglobin, vital for life above 4,000 meters, like in modern Tibetans. Rather than wiping out other human lines, Homo sapiens absorbed parts of them into their own genome. This wasn't just biology, it was a smart evolutionary mechanism, using local gene pools to improve survival. Homo sapiens' social structures could also integrate outsiders with practical knowledge, like navigating terrain, local animal behaviors, or migration routes. This was flexible assimilation, not imposition, but exchange. Archaeologists have found hybrid tools, blending Homo sapiens and Neanderthal craftsmanship. Some caves, once thought purely Neanderthal, show evidence of symbolic cave art, suggesting cultural behaviors spread across genetic lines. These findings blur species distinctions and raise profound questions. Did culture travel across species boundaries? The expansion of Homo sapiens wasn't a one-sided conquest. It was a process of contact, conflict, learning, and adaptation. A species that could both compete with and integrate others didn't just expand territory, It expanded its genetic, cultural, and behavioral capital. That's why Homo sapiens didn't just survive, but thrived in every ecosystem. Their biological and social flexibility let them adapt to environments, from tropical rainforests to frozen tundra, from vast plains to mountain ranges. More conflict meant better adaptation. More integration meant wider expansion. No other archaic humans achieved this on a global scale. Art 5. When the Earth became home. After tens of thousands of years of continuous movement, Homo sapiens had spread from the deserts of Africa to the icy edges of Europe, from Southeast Asian jungles to West Asian highlands. They didn't just pass through, they stayed. Each new region presented survival challenges, and in each one, they adapted. In frigid zones, humans learned to use animal hides for warmth, built tents from mammoth bones, preserve meat in snow. They kept fires burning overnight, dried firewood, and used stones to retain heat. These were not reactive measures, but technical strategies based on observation and constant refinement. In humid forests, they selected non-slippery stones for tools. They distinguished medicinal plants, used smoke to ward off insects, and slept on raised platforms to avoid nighttime predators. They tracked paths through broken branches or animal prints. The more complex the environment, the more they abstracted and remembered its rules. In arid regions, they dug shallow wells, followed animal tracks to water, stored food in cool rock crevices, avoided daytime heat, and moved by night. In deserts, shade and wind direction meant life or death. Across their entire territorial expansion, Homo sapiens not only adjusted skills, but transformed perception. They didn't see nature as an enemy to fight, but as a system to understand and live with. This mental shift set them apart from other human species. Behavioral adaptation at the cultural level. Archaeological evidence shows consistent patterns across most Homo sapiens settlements. Crafted tools, fixed fire pits, systematically processed animal bones, and above all, early symbols. Cave paintings, bead necklaces made of bone or shell, and ritual burials all point to one thing. Humans weren't just surviving, they were building a concept of home. Earth was not handed to Homo sapiens. They claimed it by decoding each region through experience, memory, and transmission. They didn't impose a single technology everywhere. They developed variants, each suited to its environment. This flexibility was born from fast, reflective thinking, but also from social organization, where information was shared across generations and groups, and encoded into cultural behavior. This is how Homo sapiens created a new form of residence, not just inhabiting, but belonging. Looking back, the history of human settlement didn't begin with houses or agriculture. It began with persistent adaptation. Step by step, they learned to live with nature, and from there began to change it.